The Galactic Council had made its biggest mistake in 3,000 cycles. They just didn't know it yet. Commander Vex 9 of the Hegemony Defense Corps stood in the pristine white interrogation chamber, his 4 arms crossed behind his back as he observed the small, pink creature strapped to the examination table. The human female appeared unconscious, her dark hair matted with synthetic blood from the capture operation. According to the data pad in his lower left appendage, her designation was Captain Mira Kane of the Terran Colonial Marines. Pathetic, Vex 9 muttered, his mandibles clicking with amusement. The mighty humans that have been causing so much trouble for our outer rim colonies. Look at her, so fragile, so weak. His subordinate, Lieutenant Crix 4, entered the chamber with a nervous flutter of his gill slits. Sir, the medical scans are unusual. Unusual how? Vex 9's compound eyes focused on the younger officer. Well, sir, her bone density is 3 times higher than our projections indicated. Her muscle fiber composition shows redundant systems we've never encountered. And her neurological patterns. Crix 4 paused, consulting his scanner. They're still active, even under our strongest sedatives. Vex 9's mandibles stopped clicking. That was impossible. Their sedatives could drop a Garathian battle rhino in seconds, and those beasts weighed 12 tons. This human couldn't mass more than 60 kilograms soaking wet. Perhaps the dosage was incorrect, he said, though doubt crept into his voice like ice water through his exoskeleton. Sir, we administered enough to sedate a small cruiser crew. The human should be comatose for the next 72 hours. On the table, Captain Kane's eyelids twitched. Vex 9 felt something he hadn't experienced in decades of military service, genuine unease. Increase the restraint field strength. Double it. The energy bonds around Kane's wrists and ankles hummed louder, glowing brighter blue. Standard hegemony restraints could hold a rampaging Zephyrian gorilla bear, those legendary creatures that could punch through starship hulls when properly motivated. Kane's eyes snapped open, not gradually, not with the slow confusion of someone awakening from sedation. Her eyes opened like weapon systems coming online, sharp and calculating. The first thing she did was smile. Well, Kane said, her voice clear and steady, this is awkward. Crix 4 stumbled backward, his scanner clattering to the floor. Vex 9 felt his breathing apparatus contract. The human was supposed to be unconscious. She was supposed to be helpless. Impossible, Vex 9 hissed. The sedatives alone should have, the drugs? Kane flexed her fingers experimentally, testing the restraint field. Yeah, those were cute. Made me a little sleepy for about 10 minutes. But you know what they say about human metabolism, we're really good at processing toxins. Comes from spending millennia trying not to die from everything on our home planet. She said it so casually, like discussing the weather. Vex 9's tactical training kicked in, but his mind struggled to process what he was seeing. The human was awake, alert, and showing no signs of distress despite being captured by the most powerful military force in the galaxy. You will provide information about your species' defense capabilities, Vex 9 commanded, falling back on protocol. The hegemony has questions. Kane laughed. Actually laughed. The sound echoed off the chamber walls like broken glass. Oh, I bet you do. But here's the thing, bug boy. She paused, studying the restraint field around her right wrist. I've got questions too. Like, why did you think kidnapping a colonial marine was a good idea? You are prisoners of war, Crix 4 squeaked from the corner where he'd retreated. You have no leverage here. Prisoners? Kane's smile widened, showing far too many teeth. Funny thing about that assumption. The restraint field around her right wrist flickered. Vex 9's combat instincts screamed danger, but his logical mind rejected what his eyes were telling him. The restraint fields were powered by the ship's main reactor. Nothing organic could possibly interfere with them. Kane twisted her wrist, and the field destabilized completely. See, the thing about humans, she continued conversationally, pulling her right hand free with casual ease, is that we're really, really good at breaking things that aren't supposed to be broken. The chamber's alarm systems remained silent. The restraint field generators showed no signs of malfunction on Vex 9's tactical display. According to every instrument in the room, Kane was still securely restrained. She freed her left hand with a sharp yank. "This is impossible," Vex 9 whispered. "You keep using that word," Kane said, sitting up on the examination table and working on her ankle restraints. "But I don't think it means what you think it means." Crix-4 was hyperventilating now, his gill slits fluttering like dying fish. "Sir, should I call security?" Vex 9 was too busy recalculating everything he thought he knew about human capabilities to answer immediately. The intelligence reports had described them as a primitive species, barely beyond nuclear technology when first contacted. Dangerous in groups, perhaps, but individually no match for hegemony superiority. Kane freed both ankles and stood up, stretching like she'd just gotten out of bed rather than escaped from military-grade restraints. "You know what the really funny part is?" she asked, rolling her shoulders. "You guys have been studying us for months, right? Watching our colonies, analyzing our technology, trying to figure out what makes us tick." She started walking toward them, and every instinct Vex 9 possessed screamed at him to run. "But you made one critical error in your research," Kane continued. "You studied our peaceful settlements. Our farmers, our scientists, our families just trying to build new lives among the stars." Vex 9 finally found his voice. "Security. All units to interrogation chamber 7. Kane didn't seem concerned by this development. "The problem with that approach is simple. Those people? They're not soldiers. They're not the ones you should be worried about." The chamber door hissed open, and 6 hegemony security troops rushed in, their plasma rifles charged and ready. Each trooper stood over 2 meters tall, their powered armor gleaming with enough weaponry to level a small building. Kane looked at them like a teacher observing particularly slow students. "The people you should be worried about," she continued, "are the ones like me. The ones who volunteered to spend years in deep space, knowing we might never see home again. The ones who signed up to fight things that go bump in the night between the stars. Fire." Vex 9 commanded. 6 plasma bolts lanced through the air where Kane had been standing. She wasn't there anymore, she was behind the leftmost trooper, her hand wrapped around his weapon. The plasma rifle crumpled like paper in her grip. "The ones," Kane said, as the trooper stared in shock at his destroyed weapon, "who actually enjoy this sort of thing." The trooper swung a powered gauntlet at Kane's head, a blow that should have shattered her skull like an eggshell. She caught his wrist mid-swing. The sound that followed would haunt Vex 9's dreams for the rest of his considerably shortened life. Composite armor designed to withstand direct artillery strikes cracked like ice under Kane's grip. The trooper's arm bent at an angle that defied anatomy. His scream was cut short when Kane used him as a club to knock down 2 of his companions. "You see," Kane said, stepping over the groaning forms of 3 elite hegemony soldiers, "humans have this really annoying habit of exceeding expectations under pressure." The remaining troops opened fire in full automatic, filling the chamber with enough plasma energy to melt a tank. Kane moved between the bolts like she was dancing, each step perfectly timed, each movement economical and precise. She reached the second trooper before his rifle finished cycling through its power cell. "We call it adrenaline," she explained, pulling the trooper's helmet off and studying his terrified face with clinical interest. "Neat little chemical cocktail that lets us ignore things like pain, fatigue, and common sense when survival is on the line." She flicked him in the forehead. He crashed into the far wall and didn't get up. Crix-4 was making a high-pitched keening sound that Vex 9 had only heard from hegemony younglings during their first molt. 2 more security troops rushed through the door, these ones carrying heavy assault weapons designed for ship-to-ship combat. Kane turned toward them, and Vex 9 saw something in her eyes that made his ichor run cold. She was enjoying this. "The really scary part," Kane said, catching the first heavy plasma bolt with her bare hand and somehow redirecting it into the ceiling, "is that this isn't even my final form. The last trooper standing dropped his weapon and ran. Vex 9 couldn't blame him. Vex 9's tactical implant was screaming warnings at a frequency that made his head tentacles ache. Threat assessment, maximum. Survival probability, declining rapidly. Recommended action, retreat immediately. For once in his military career, he agreed with the computer. Kane, he said, trying to keep his voice steady as she stepped over the unconscious forms of his elite security team. Let us discuss terms. The human tilted her head like a predator considering whether its prey was worth the effort to catch. Terms? Oh, that's rich. 5 minutes ago you were planning to dissect me for science. Now you want to negotiate? She picked up one of the discarded plasma rifles, examined it briefly, then crushed the barrel between her fingers like it was made of soft clay. The weapon's power core sparked and died. Fascinating design, Kane mused. Efficient energy transfer, compact construction. Your engineers did good work. Too bad it's built for civilized warfare. Crixfor whimpered from his corner. What do you mean, civilized warfare? Kane's smile could have frozen hydrogen. Well, you see, most species in the galaxy fight wars like gentlemen. Rules of engagement, proper protocols, minimal civilian casualties. Very sporting, very reasonable. She snapped the rifle in half and tossed the pieces aside. Humans don't do sporting. We do winning. The chamber door hissed open again, and this time a full tactical squad entered. 12 troops in heavy-powered armor, armed with military-grade weapons that could punch through starship hulls. Their leader, a massive hegemony sergeant with battle scars across his carapace, raised his weapon. Stand down, human. You are surrounded. Kane looked at the new arrivals with genuine delight. Oh good. I was worried this might get boring. You cannot possibly defeat 12 armed soldiers. Vex 9 protested, his voice cracking like adolescent molt change. 12. Kane counted them on her fingers, lips moving silently. Yep, math checks out. 12 heavily armed, well-trained, technologically superior alien warriors versus one unarmed human female. She cracked her knuckles. The sound echoed like gunshots. Hardly seems fair, she continued. You guys might want to call for backup. The sergeant's mandibles clicked in what Vex 9 recognized as barely controlled rage. Arrogant creature. Your species' delusions of superiority end here. He lunged forward, his powered gauntlet aimed directly at Kane's face. The blow carried enough kinetic force to shatter concrete, backed by servos that could lift a small vehicle. Kane caught his fist 1 centimeter from her nose. The servo motors in his armor screamed in protest, sparks flying from overloaded circuits. The sergeant's eyes widened in disbelief as his supposedly unstoppable punch was stopped cold by 5 small fingers. You tried to break my nose, Kane observed conversationally. That was rude. She twisted, the sergeant's arm separated from his shoulder with a sound like breaking timber. His scream of agony was cut short when Kane used the severed appendage to backhand him across the chamber. He hit the wall with enough force to leave a spider web of cracks in the reinforced metal. The remaining 11 troops opened fire simultaneously. Kane wasn't there anymore, she was among them like a hurricane made of violence and terrible purpose. Armor designed to withstand anti-tank weapons crumpled under her blows. Weapons that could melt through starship hulls were torn apart like paper toys. Professional soldiers who had fought across a dozen star systems discovered that all their training, all their technology, all their superior evolutionary advantages meant exactly nothing against a truly motivated human. It took 37 seconds. When the plasma smoke cleared, Kane stood in the center of a circle of groaning, defeated hegemony warriors. Her clothes were singed, her hair was mussed, and she had a small cut on her cheek from a piece of flying shrapnel. She was still smiling. 37 seconds, she announced, checking an imaginary watch. Personal best was 29, but they were fighting in a corridor. Open space always takes longer. Vex 9's breathing apparatus was working overtime. How, how is this possible? Your species barely has interstellar travel. You're primitives. Kane laughed, the sound echoing off the chamber walls like breaking bells. Primitives? Oh, sweetie. You have no idea what primitive means. She walked over to where Crixfor was cowering and crouched down to his eye level. Tell me something. When your people evolved, what was your home world like? I don't understand the relevance, humor me. Crixfor's gill slits fluttered nervously. Peaceful. Temperate climate, abundant resources, no major predators. Our ancestors developed intelligence through cooperation and social planning. Kane nodded like a teacher encouraging a student. And I bet most of the galaxy's species have similar stories, right? Nice, safe home worlds where evolution rewarded being smart and getting along? Of course, Vex 9 interrupted, his tactical training finally reasserting itself. Violent species destroy themselves before achieving space travel. It's basic evolutionary theory. Kane's smile widened until it showed entirely too many teeth. Basic evolutionary theory, she repeated. Right. Well, here's the thing about Earth. She stood up, brushing dust off her uniform. Earth tried to kill us every single day for 4 million years. She began counting on her fingers. Ice ages that lasted millennia. Volcanic eruptions that blocked out the sun. Asteroid impacts that ended entire geological eras. Predators that hunted us from land, sea, and air. Diseases that killed 90% of our population. Natural disasters that could wipe out civilizations overnight. Crixfor made a small whimpering sound. And that's just the environment, Kane continued cheerfully. Then there were the other humans. We spent our entire evolutionary history competing with each other for resources, territory, mates, and the right to pass on our genes to the next generation. War isn't something we learned how to do, Commander. War is something we evolved to be good at. She picked up a piece of broken armor and crushed it to powder in her palm. Every other species in the galaxy developed intelligence as a tool for cooperation. Humans developed intelligence as a weapon. Everything else just followed naturally. The chamber's emergency alarm finally started wailing, about 15 minutes too late to do any good. Red lights bathed the devastation in an appropriately hellish glow. Now then, Kane said, clapping her hands together. I believe someone mentioned wanting to discuss terms. Vex 9's tactical implant was no longer providing survival probability calculations. It had apparently given up and was now just flashing error messages in increasingly frantic colors. What do you want? He managed to ask. Well, first, I want you to send a message to your superiors. Tell them that attacking human colonies was a spectacularly bad idea, and they should probably apologize before we get really annoyed. The hegemony does not apologize to inferior species. Kane raised an eyebrow. Inferior? I'm sorry, which one of us is currently surrounded by the unconscious bodies of your elite warriors? Vex 9 looked around the chamber and wisely remained silent. Second, Kane continued, I want safe passage off this ship. Nothing personal, but your accommodations leave something to be desired. And if we refuse? Kane's expression didn't change, but somehow the temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Well, then I'll have to demonstrate some of those other human talents I mentioned. You know, the ones we developed during 4 million years of competing with each other? She cracked her knuckles again. Did I mention that humans are really, really creative when it comes to violence? Because we are. It's practically an art form for us. Somewhere in the distance, Vex 9 could hear the sound of his entire worldview crumbling like a house built on sand. The escape pods are on Deck 7, he whispered. Kane beamed at him like he'd just passed a particularly difficult test. See? Cooperation. I knew we could work something out. She headed for the door, then paused and looked back. Oh, and Commander? When you send that message to your superiors, make sure you mention that I'm not even slightly unusual by human standards. We've got about 12 billion more just like me back home." She waved cheerfully. "Thanks for the workout. This was fun." And with that, Captain Mira Kane of the Terran Colonial Marines walked out of the chamber, leaving behind 12 unconscious elite soldiers, 2 traumatized officers, and the ruins of everything the hegemony thought they knew about the universe. In the silence that followed, Crixfor finally found his voice. "Sir? Should we pursue her?" Vex 9 looked at him like he'd just suggested juggling live grenades. "Lieutenant," he said carefully, "I want you to compile a full report on this incident. Then I want you to transmit it to High Command with a Priority Alpha classification." "What should the report say, sir?" Vex 9 stared at the devastation around them, his compound eyes reflecting the red emergency lights like dying stars. "Tell them we're going to need a bigger fleet.